Hey, everybody. So, as you know, the State of the Union address took place this week on Capitol Hill, and we are living in 2026. And so, President Trump gave the State of the Union address in front of a joint session of Congress. And per usual, it came with its share of theatrics. And my understanding, ever since I first watched the State of the Union, was for them to serve a specific purpose, which usually was around uniting the country around domestic challenges, global threats, issues of everyday life, things that would encourage and inspire people to continue to put their trust in the government, right? But it typically involved both the left and the right, unifying, for the most part, showing a strong message of unity. Well, if you missed this week's State of the Union, I'm going to share a brief recap. So, welcome to another episode of the Holy Politician podcast. So, here's a quick summary of what took place during the State of the Union. First, Representative Al Green from Texas interrupted the State of the Union early on this time, which seemed to be on cue, his interruptions, that is, and particularly around him trying to impeach a president or get loud with the president, particularly President Trump. And this is not rare form for Representative Al Green. And so he got ejected like he has gotten ejected before. That took place early on this time around. The Democrats, who were on the left of the dais, they, for most of the event, sat in their seats. They didn't stand up to clap very often. The majority of the time, they just sat there, very stoic, refusing to get up, except for a couple of rare moments where they were clapping for a service member who was getting acknowledged. So they sat there. The Republicans on the right side of the dais nearly stood the entire time. They clapped almost if the president just breathed, they were clapping. They clapped for almost everything he said. And that too was interesting. So you saw this kind of showmanship happening on the left, where they were basically in protest. On the right, they were clapping for just some of the most trivial things. They stood up and clapped. Then you had Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, who had just a very weird and kind of, I don't know, it was just a very strange moment where it looked like she was manifesting. And it actually was uncomfortable to watch, but you watched her, then you saw Representative Rashida Tlaib, then you saw Representative Tim McBride, and just all of it just looked like a mixed bag of just tomfoolery. Watch this clip.
Sanctuary cities that protect the criminals and enact serious penalties for public officials who block the removal of criminal aliens. In many cases, drug lords, murderers all over our country, they're blocking the removal of these people out of our country, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
And so she's yelling over and over again, "You have killed Americans." And, she's, "You have killed Americans." And she's upset because basically of ICE being in Minnesota. She would rather for the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency not to be in Minnesota, right? And so she's sitting there yelling at the president as he's making his address, and just completely loses her mind. And you see her yelling, and you see Rashida, her homegirl, yelling, and then you see her homeboy yelling, but you can't really see his mouth moving because the Fox box is there. But he's a man that happens to be in Congress that likes to dress up with a woman. We'll talk about that in a minute. The president was clear in saying that the first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens and not illegal aliens, right? And so this got them all fired up, and apparently they disagree. And so they're really yelling at each other, and Trump is ignoring them, and then all the Republicans are clapping, and then they start chanting USA, USA, and so this thing kind of it's just barreling is what it's doing. And then Trump eventually says this. Watch this clip.
These people are crazy. I'm telling you, they're crazy. Amazing, incredible. Boy, oh boy. We're lucky we have a country. With people like this, Democrats are destroying our country, but we've stopped it just in the nick of time, didn't we? Huh?
And really, if you think about it, it's really hard to argue otherwise. And one of the things that he says at the end of that clip is just in the nick of time. And, if you've listened to um, just the way that the body of Christ and some prophetic voices have been talking about this presidency, it almost is like God sent Trump there to halt a lot of the social contagion confusion that's been taking place just in the nick of time, right? It's because there's this just mass proliferation of demonic activity, of disobedience to God, of blatantly thumbing people's noses and really s- throwing the middle finger up in God's face, just the way that people are living their lives, their lifestyles, the way that they are engaging in all forms of perversion, from the highest levels of government, now that we know, talking about Prince Andrew and the monarchy, to the lowest levels of families where you've got two dads in a household, or you've got two dads that have adopted a foster child and want to raise a foster child in confusion. We've got this mass contagion of confusion that's proliferated this country. And so if you have a president come in who wants to press pause on some of this foolishness, like I'm getting ready to show you in this next clip, that literally is just in the nick of time where we could have our sin could have compounded through policy making in a way that could truly have brought dire consequences on our nation. Now, we can delay these things, and these are things that I've heard and things that I truly see happening in the spirit, that these things have been delayed. Can we stop them? That remains to be seen. But if we continue to permit things like this to happen, we truly need to continue to stand in the gap and ask God to have mercy on our souls. Watch this clip.
In the gallery tonight are Sage Blair and her mother, Michelle. In 2021, Sage was 14 when school officials in Virginia sought to socially transition her to a new gender, treating her as a boy and hiding it from her parents. Hard to believe, isn't it? Before long, a confused Sage ran away from home after she was found in a horrific situation in Maryland. A left-wing judge refused to return Sage to her parents because they did not immediately state that their daughter was their son. Sage was thrown into an all-boys state home and suffered terribly for a long time. But today, all of that is behind them because Sage is a proud and wonderful young woman with a full-ride scholarship to Liberty University. Sage and Michelle, please stand up. And thank you for your great bravery. And who can believe that we're even speaking about things like this? 15 years ago, if somebody was up here and said that, they'd say, what's wrong with him? But now we have to say it because it's going on all over numerous states without even telling the parents. But surely we can all agree no state can be allowed to rip children from their parents' arms and transition them to a new gender against the parents' will. Who would believe that we're even talking about this? We must ban it, and we must ban it immediately.
Now, could you imagine being a parent and you send your child to school as, I don't know, Julia, and everybody at school is calling Julia John because they are basically allowing this child whose frontal lobe isn't fully developed to get caught up in this social experiment called transgenderism? And then you begin to notice that your child is transitioning or sneaking off to get hormone therapy. It's just wild. It's wild what these schools have allowed, and it's even more wild what governments are doing and harming and destroying families and children's lives. Governments are permitting this to happen when Child Protective Services shows up at your house and tells you that if you don't use the right pronouns with your child that you gave birth to and are raising, that they're going to snatch that child out of your home. That is the highest form of evil and demonic activity that you could ever imagine. That is the devil and his constituents at work. And so when you see things like this, you know God does not play around when it comes to his children. He doesn't play around when it comes to true believers, but when you mess with the least of these, when you mess with God's children, vulnerable children, there will be a price to pay for that. And in that clip, you saw Congressman Tim McBride, who goes by Sarah McBride of Delaware, and he's featured in that same clip because he believes that he is a woman, while you're talking about this young girl that is, they try to transition under her mom's nose, right? And so this freshman that is in Congress, Tim McBride, who likes to wear dresses to work and wear heels or flats, really, I don't know if his feet can fit in heels, but he dresses up like a woman every day. And people are walking around the halls of Congress like this is normal. If you look at where he sits in his committee hearings, it says Miss McBride of Delaware. That is an entire man that is sitting in Congress representing American constituents, and we're pretending like he is not a man. And so, how do you even take Congress seriously when you have people that are in costume and in character and have mental illnesses legislating on behalf of you and me? That's something that we need to continue to pray about. We need to be warring over these spirits that are walking across the Capitol every single day, whether they are men that pretend to be women or people that are operating under a Jezebelic spirit, which is a large part of Congress, because most of them are operating under a spirit of control. And so, what I hope that you take away from this is so much of what we're witnessing today is just manifesting spirits. And if you are somebody that is reading the word and you understand how everything in life is spiritual and how we are dealing with a fallen world, and in that fallen world, the enemy is here with his constituents, i.e., demons that were kicked out of heaven and that are here to kill, steal, and destroy every person with every might that they have. But as believers, we've been given the authority to trample on scorpions and snakes and to overcome all the power of the enemy. And so we have to start using our authority. We have to start using our voice. We have to start using the tools that God has given us because our fight is not in the natural. The weapons that we fight with are not the weapons of this world, but they are mighty to the pulling down of strongholds. And if you watch the State of the Union, if you are on social media, if you are watching regular television today, you know that there is a war that is raging every second of every day. And so we have to recognize that much of what we see is smoke and mirrors. Second Corinthians 4:18 says, "So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, because what is seen is temporary, it is brief, and it is fleeting. It's here today and it's gone tomorrow. But what is unseen is eternal, and that is your soul. Your soul is eternal. My soul is eternal. We have eternity that is at our fingertips. Jesus could come back in any minute. And so what do we need to make sure that we have ready? We need to make sure that we are readying ourselves, that we are readying our children, and that we have oil in our lamps. Because if we don't have oil in our lamps, then we are going to be snuffed out, we're going to be trampled on, we are going to be duped and deceived, just like what we see happening every day, whether it's the State of the Union or a conversation that you're having with your colleagues at work. If a man walks up to you with bass in his throat, wearing a dress, and you engage in that conversation like it's normal, you're participating in the foolishness. Do not condone what is absolutely antithetical to God's truth. You don't have to be disrespectful, but you just say, pause. I'm sorry. I need to walk away from this conversation. You don't have to explain it. Maybe you have a family emergency that's come up. Maybe they might not know. Maybe you need to take a phone call. Maybe you have your stomach is queasy. You have to run to the restroom. They don't know why you're walking away. You just say, oh, pause. Excuse me. I got to step away. And you just walk away. You don't have to be disrespectful, but what you can do, you can walk away, go around to the corner, just plead the blood of Jesus over that entire environment and pray for that person's soul. Thank you for watching. Keep praying, keep standing in the gap because we truly are at war. God bless you.